You know, we spend so much of our lives planning for the future. But what if the person you're planning for, your future self, is basically a complete stranger? Today, we're going to dig into why it's so ridiculously hard to plan for a future when we can't even predict who we're going to become. And more importantly, what we can actually do about it.
Okay, to really get a handle on this, let's start with a story from author Morgan Housel. He had a friend who, since he was a teenager, had this one single all-consuming goal. I mean, this guy fought tooth and nail, bulldozed his way through school, and finally, he did it. He actually achieved his lifelong dream.
But here's the kicker. When Housel caught up with him years later, his friend admitted something shocking. Despite getting everything he had ever wanted, he was completely and totally miserable. The one thing he'd sacrificed everything for, it had turned into an absolute nightmare.
So how does that even happen? How does something you've poured your entire life into become your biggest regret? Well, the answer is where this story gets really interesting for all of us.
His dream was to become a doctor. Simple enough, right? But the reality? He called it an awful career. And the reason wasn't that he failed. It was the unexpected consequence of his success. The crushing stress, the brutal hours, it was a reality he just couldn't have fathomed as a teenager. And this brings us to the big lesson here. We are just terrible at predicting how our future selves will feel about the lives we're so carefully building for them.
And look, this isn't just some random one-off story. It actually points to a fundamental quirk in our psychology that messes with all of our big long-term decisions. And there's a name for this exact phenomenon.
Just think about your own life for a second. This timeline kinda nails it, right? At 5, you might think driving a tractor is the coolest job in the world. By 18, maybe you're chasing the prestige of being a lawyer. But fast forward to 40, and that same person might happily give it all up just to have more time with their family. And then, at 70, the game changes again, and it's all about whether you've got enough to retire. Our goals are always on the move. So what do psychologists call this thing? It's the end of history illusion. It's this weird mental glitch we all have. We can look back and see so clearly how much we've changed, but we somehow convince ourselves that the person we are right now, well, this is the final version. We constantly, and I mean dramatically, underestimate how much we're still going to change.
You know who explains this perfectly? Harvard psychologist Daniel Gilbert. He says we're basically signing contracts for a future person who isn't even in the room to negotiate. It's kind of like tattoos, right? He points out that people pay good money to get tattoos removed that they once paid good money to get. That amazing dragon tattoo that felt so you at 20, it might not feel so great to the 40-year-old version of you.
Okay, so if we know for a fact that we're all going to change, how on earth do we build a long-term financial plan that can actually survive us? The trick isn't to have a rigid plan, but a flexible one. Let's jump into 2 really powerful ideas for doing exactly that. According to Housel, if you want a financial plan that can actually go the distance, for decades, it really boils down to 2 big ideas. First, you've got to avoid the extremes. And second, you have to learn how to beat this powerful mental trap called sunk costs.
All right, let's talk about that first one, avoiding extremes. If you commit to working 100-hour weeks to make as much money as possible, you literally risk waking up one day and realizing you missed your kid's entire childhood. And no amount of money can buy that back. On the other hand, if you save almost nothing to have more freedom now, you might deeply regret that in your 70s. The real answer here, it's balance. A moderate approach is what gives your future self options, and options are the best defense against regret.
Okay, on to that second strategy. And for this one, I have a question for you. What do you think is the single most dangerous anchor in all of finance?
The answer? Sunk costs. This is that nasty psychological trap that makes us stick with a bad job, a failing investment, or a broken plan just because we've already put so much time or money into it. It's like refusing to abandon a sinking ship just because you helped build it.
You want to know who absolutely mastered this? Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman. He was famous for working on something for months, and then, if he found a better way to do it, he would just detonate it. He'd delete everything and start over from scratch. His secret weapon? He'd say, "I have no sunk costs." Just think about that for a second. Imagine having that kind of freedom with your own financial choices.
So when we pull all of this together, we get to the single most important thing to remember from the end of history illusion, especially when we're thinking about our future.
Here's the bottom line. You know that magic of compounding, where your money starts working for you? It needs one thing more than anything else: a ton of time.
We're talking years, even decades. And the only way a plan survives that long is if it's flexible enough to change when you change. A plan's real strength isn't in how rigid it is, but in how much it can bend without breaking.
And that really leaves us with one last big question that you have to ask yourself. Take a good, hard look at your own goals, your own ambitions. Is the plan you've got today built for the person you are right now, or is it ready for all the different versions of you that you haven't even met yet?